The weight of silence. Layla stood at the edge of the crowd, her breath catching in her throat as the chants swelled around her. The air in Washington, D.C., was thick with late summer heat, but it was the energy of the protest that made her skin prickle. Signs bobbed above the sea of people, their messages scrawled in bold, urgent strokes: "Free Gaza, end the siege, ceasefire now." The words were a drumbeat, a pulse that echoed the ache in her chest. She was 24, a Palestinian-American graphic designer who had grown up in the suburbs of Virginia, far from the olive groves and stone houses of her grandmother's stories. Yet Gaza was not a distant place to her, it was a wound, raw and unhealed, passed down through generations. Her grandmother, Amal, had been born in Jaffa, forced to flee during the Nakba of 1948. Amal's stories were Layla's inheritance, tales of a home lost, of a people scattered, of a land that still bled. Layla clutched her sketchbook, her fingers tracing the worn leather cover. She had come to the protest not as an artist but as a witness, driven by a need she couldn't fully name. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, another news alert about Gaza. She didn't open it. She already knew the numbers: thousands dead, tens of thousands displaced, hospitals crumbling under the weight of war. The statistics were numbing, but the images: children caked in dust, mothers wailing, homes reduced to rubble, those stayed with her, haunting her dreams. The protest was a kaleidoscope of voices: students, elders, families, all united by a shared outrage. A young man with a megaphone led a chant, his voice hoarse but unbroken: "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Layla's lips moved, but no sound came out. She felt like an imposter, standing among people who seemed so sure of their place in this fight. Her life in America had been comfortable, insulated. What right did she have to claim this pain? Then she saw him, a boy, no older than 10, standing a few feet away. His dark eyes were wide, fixed on the crowd, a small Palestinian flag clutched in his hands. His mother stood beside him, her face etched with exhaustion but fierce with resolve. Something about the boy reminded Layla of her younger brother, Sammy, who had once asked her, "Why don't we ever go to Gaza?" She hadn't known how to answer him then. She still didn't. Layla opened her sketchbook and began to draw. The boy's face took shape under her pencil: sharp cheekbones, a furrowed brow, eyes that held too much for someone so young. She sketched the crowd around him, capturing the raised fists, the banners, the raw defiance. Art was her way of making sense of the world, of holding on to moments that felt too heavy to carry. As she drew, a woman's voice cut through the noise. "My name is Noor," she said into a microphone, her words trembling with emotion. "I am from Gaza. My family is still there, trapped under bombs. They have no food, no water, no safety. I am here to beg you, do not look away." Layla's pencil froze. Noor's voice was a lifeline, pulling her into the heart of the protest. She felt a surge of guilt for her silence, her hesitation. She wanted to be brave like Noor, like the boy with the flag, like the thousands who had come to demand justice. Roots and ruptures. Layla's connection to Gaza had always been through stories. Her grandmother, Amal, would sit her on her lap as a child, her voice soft but steady as she spoke of Jaffa's orange groves, the salty breeze of the Mediterranean, the laughter of cousins playing in the courtyard. But those stories always ended in 1948, when Amal's family was driven out, their home seized, their lives uprooted. "We carried the key to our house," Amal would say, her fingers brushing the old iron key she wore around her neck. "We thought we'd return." Layla had grown up with that key, a symbol of loss and hope, hanging in her grandmother's small apartment. Amal had settled in Virginia after years in a refugee camp in Jordan, raising Layla's mother, Hiba, on stories of resilience. Hiba had passed those stories to Layla, but they came with a warning: don't let their pain become your burden. Layla had tried to heed that advice, focusing on her art, her career, her life in America. But Gaza's pain had a way of finding her. The protest was her first. She had seen the flyers online, shared by a friend from her college art program. "Come stand for Palestine," the post had read, with a photo of a child holding a sign, "I deserve to live." Layla had stared at that image for hours, her heart twisting. She had spent too long on the sidelines, scrolling through news feeds, feeling helpless. The protest was a chance to act, to be part of something bigger than herself. As the crowd moved toward the Capitol, Layla followed, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. She listened to the stories around her: a woman whose brother was a doctor in Gaza, working in a hospital with no supplies, a man who had lost his entire village to airstrikes, a teenager who had organized her school's walkout for Palestine. Their voices wove together, a tapestry of grief and resistance. Layla's thoughts drifted to her grandmother's key. Amal had died 2 years ago, and the key now hung in Layla's apartment, a quiet reminder of her roots. She wondered what Amal would think of her now, standing among strangers, trying to find her place in a fight that felt both distant and deeply personal. The boy with the flag appeared again, weaving through the crowd with his mother. Layla caught his eye, and he smiled, a small, fleeting thing that broke her heart. She wanted to ask his name, his story, but he was gone before she could. The fire of courage. The protest reached a crescendo as the crowd gathered before a line of police in riot gear. The air crackled with tension, but the protesters stood firm, their chants growing louder. Layla felt a surge of adrenaline, her fear mingling with a strange exhilaration. She had never been part of something so raw, so alive. Noor took the microphone again, her voice steady now. "We are here because silence is complicity," she said. "Every bomb that falls on Gaza is paid for with our taxes. Every child who dies is a child we failed. But we are here, and we will not be silent." The crowd roared in response, a wave of sound that shook Layla to her core. She thought of the news reports she had read, the blockade that had choked Gaza for years, the lack of clean water, the power outages, the constant threat of violence. She thought of the children, like the boy with the flag, who had grown up knowing only war. And she thought of the protesters. Ordinary people who had chosen to stand up, to risk arrest, to demand change. A young woman beside Layla began to sing, her voice clear and haunting. It was a Palestinian folk song, one Layla recognized from her grandmother's kitchen. Others joined in, their voices rising above the police sirens. Layla's throat tightened, but she sang too, her voice soft at first, then stronger. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. As the song ended, a scuffle broke out near the front. A protester had tried to cross the police line, and officers moved in, their batons raised. The crowd surged forward, shouting, but Noor's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay calm. Stay together. This is our power." Layla saw the boy and his mother, holding hands tightly, their faces resolute. She wanted to protect them, to shield them from the world's cruelty. She opened her sketchbook again, her hands shaking as she drew the scene. The police in their faceless helmets, the protesters with their fists raised, the boy's flag fluttering defiantly. Her art was no longer just a way to process, it was a weapon, a way to bear witness. The child's eyes. As the protest began to disperse, Layla found herself near the boy and his mother again. The woman's name was Aisha, and the boy was Omar. They had come from Baltimore, driven by a letter Aisha had received from her sister in Gaza. She said the children don't sleep anymore, Aisha told Layla, her voice breaking. They hear the drones and think it's the end. Omar listened quietly, his flag now tucked into his backpack. Layla knelt beside him. "Do you like to draw?" she asked, holding out her sketchbook. He nodded shyly, and she handed him a pencil. He drew a house, simple but sturdy, with a tree beside it. "That's my aunt's house," he said. "She says it's still standing, but the windows are gone." Layla's heart ached. She thought of her own childhood drawings. Fantastical landscapes, superheroes, animals. Omar's world was different, shaped by stories of survival. She showed him her sketch of the key, and his eyes lit up. "My mom has one like that," he said. "She says it's for home." Aisha smiled, a weary but warm expression. "We carry our homes with us," she said. "Even when they're gone." Layla nodded, understanding more deeply than ever. She asked Aisha if she could share Omar's drawing online, to show the world what Gaza's children dreamed of. Aisha agreed, her eyes shining with gratitude. That night, Layla sat in her apartment, the key hanging on the wall above her desk. She uploaded Omar's drawing to her art blog, along with her sketches from the protest and a caption, "This is Gaza. This is courage. This is why we march." She wrote about Noor's speech, Aisha's story, Omar's hope. She wrote about her grandmother's key and the weight of history. By morning, the post had been shared thousands of times, a ripple of awareness spreading across the internet. The ripple effect. Weeks later, Layla returned to another protest, this time with her own sign, "Gaza's children deserve to dream." She had started a small art project, collecting drawings from children at protests and sharing them online. Each one was a window into a world of resilience and loss, a call to action for those who saw them. Omar and Aisha were there again, and Omar ran to Layla, holding a new drawing, a kite soaring above a city. "For my cousin in Gaza," he said. "She wants to fly." Layla hugged him, her eyes stinging. She felt Amal's presence in that moment, as if her grandmother were watching, proud. The protests continued, growing larger, louder. Politicians began to take notice, pressured by the voices of millions. Layla's art became a small but vital part of the movement, a way to humanize the numbers, to make the crisis real. She met others like her, young people grappling with their diaspora identities, finding strength in collective action. One evening, as she sat with Aisha and Omar, Noor approached her. "Your art is powerful," she said. "It's giving Gaza a face." Layla blushed, unsure how to respond. "I'm just drawing what I see," she said. Noor shook her head. "You're drawing what the world needs to see." Epilogue, the key to tomorrow. Layla stood before her grandmother's key, now framed beside her desk. She had added a new sketch to her collection, a girl holding a kite, her face turned toward a sky free of drones. It was for Omar's cousin, for all the children of Gaza, for the future they deserved. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza was far from over. The news still brought stories of suffering, but it also carried whispers of change, ceasefire talks, aid deliveries, global pressure mounting. Layla knew the road was long, but she felt different now. She was no longer silent, no longer on the sidelines. She was part of a movement, a chorus of voices demanding justice. She thought of Omar, of his small hand clutching the flag, of his drawing of a house that still stood. She thought of Noor's courage, Aisha's resilience, her gran.